Hi everybody, how are you doing today? Today we're going to talk about research design. Now this is going to help you in preparing any type of research that you're going to perform. It'll help give you some ideas and create a plan. Now, with my background being auditing, one of the things that I always talk about is the importance of having a plan. Anytime that you have a plan, that creates an effective and efficient audit. And so the same thing happens with our research. Whenever we have a plan or an outline of what we are going to be doing, what we are trying to achieve, then we are going to end up with a more efficient and effective product. And so we're going to talk about research design and how that plays a part in research as a whole. So anytime that I'm thinking about research design, I think about it being a map. I just made the connection or the analogy back to creating a audit plan. And if you're looking at the same type of concept in that our research design is our map. It is the map that guides us from how we are going to design our research, what our objective is, and how we are going to find information that we are testing perhaps, or if we're trying to discover new information. And so the research design plays that integral part in your research as a whole because it's going to be your guiding point. That research design is going to play several different parts. So, first we have, activity and time-based plan. What type of research are we going to be doing? Are we doing surveys, or are we going to actually do interviews of people? Do we just need to gather some archival data that is already out there? What is our goal? What information, what data are we going to need in order to establish the research or the hypothesis that we are trying to prove? Our plan is going to be based off of our research question. So when we go and we create a research question, that question drives the type of research we are going to be involved. So one example would be something that I have been looking at recently, which is the impact of assessment on introductory accounting students. How does that play a role in their classroom performance as well as their final grade? And so the research that I am going to be wanting to do is I'm going to want to assess a characteristic, which is the regular assessments in the classroom. That is my research question. That is what I'm trying to derive. Now, always keep in mind that your research question is different than your hypothesis. Your hypothesis is a statement. Typically, we always state it in the negative form. So my hypothesis would be that, in this case, talking about assessments, regular timed assessments, for an introductory accounting class would be there is no correlation between regular practice and the final grade of an introductory accounting student, something to that effect, but it would be stated in the negative. Your research design is also going to be the guide for selecting your sources and the type of information. That is what I was just talking about with my example of the assessment process. We're going to be looking at, assessing what that impact is. And so the information that I'm going to be looking for is then going to be information that is relative to the student's grade. The framework in which we want to specify relationships among those variables, again, we sort of just already discussed that piece, as well as an outline of every research activity. So when you are developing your research design, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that you need to have sufficient detail that if another researcher wants to come behind you and redo your research, that they can follow step by step and come up with the same type of results. And so you want enough detail in there so that it's actually outlining that. So when we're looking at the research design, we have different type of descriptors that are associated. Now, I handed out a handout a few moments ago that was very similar to the chart that you see in the PowerPoint now, except for it's got a separate column that is associated with the table that you're going to be able to put your own little notes to sort of help you define these different descriptors. So the first one is the degree in which the research question has been crystallized. In other words, what we are talking about is, do we have a strong research question? Does it have a strong foundation? Or is this something that is a little bit new? And so we have two different options that we can look at. We can look at an exploratory study, or we can look at a formal study. Exploratory study, it sounds like it is exploring. You're exploring a new idea. Whereas a formal study, that is going to have that firm, grounded research question. Perhaps it's a research question that a previous researcher had that you want to explore further. So the next piece is the topical scope. How deep do we want to go to this study? Is this a preliminary study, or is this a further study that has already been established? If we are looking to just do a preliminary study, maybe we want to go with statistical study, or look at a case and then pull the statistics after that and go into a deeper and see if it has a broader impact than what a single case would have. The purpose of the study: are we trying to be descriptive, or are we trying to establish some type of relationship? We're going to talk about descriptive studies and casual studies a little bit later and sort of see how those two are different. The power of the researcher. Now, this is an important impact because it has to do with, what type of influence that the researcher has on the variables themselves. If there is a lot of impact, and this is going to be experimental because we can then manipulate our variables that we're dealing with. Whereas if we don't, it's considered the ex post facto. Method of collecting data. Are we going to do this through surveys? Are we going to do this through questioning? Are we going to do this through observation? Time dimension, cross-sectional versus longitude. Longitude means it's going to be over a period of years, where cross-sectional is typically a smaller time period. Research environment. Are we doing this in the field? Are we actually going out and talking to individuals, or are we doing everything inside a lab itself? Or are we creating a simulation that we're going to then try to study through? And then it's going to be the participants' perceptions in the research activity. So if we are looking to see how they are an individual, we were talking about studying a moment ago, if we're looking to see how an individual's study habits impact their grade, well, then we're looking at their actual routine. We're not changing anything about what they're doing. We want to know how what they do impacts their final outcome. Whereas in modified routine, we are asking them to change their idea. So talking again about the project that I have going on with the assessment of financial accounting students, I'm actually modifying their routine. Historically in the past, they were always given an assignment and it was due in a week or two, whereas now they're given assignments that are due every day. So I'm having to modify their routine of what they expect to do in previous courses. And so I'm trying to modify, and hopefully the whole goal is that they will see the benefit and move it on. So with the handout that you have, what I would like you to do is in that separate column, that last column that I've put in there that's blank, I would like you to go in and put in some examples or some thoughts that will help you connect these different descriptors and the types of studies that are involved. So we sort of hit on this a little bit when we're talking about the descriptors, that there are different types of studies. Exploratory study, like we were talking about, this is the investigative. This is usually a vague research problem that there's not a whole lot of current existing literature. You're trying to find out more And so you want to really dive into that idea. And so you may not have that solid research question, so you need to create. Exploratory studies can be qualitative or quantitative. However, most of the time they are qualitative because these are typically used with focus groups or surveys. If you think about a customer satisfaction survey, that's exploratory. You're trying to get that new feedback. Descriptive studies, on the other hand, are considered investigative as well, but investigative in the sense that you are looking deeper into something that already exists. There is a clearly stated hypothesis and a use of variables. We're trying to find some type of correlation between one set of variables and another. And then we have causal studies. These are looking at the cause and effect relationships of